Welcome to day 33 of the Omer count. It's the Rabbi's blog again, coming from Adat Yeshua Masonic Synagogue in Norwich. And of course, I can't let this day pass, of course, without some sort of comment or thought on actually Lag BaOmer, which is this day of day 33 of our count. It's interesting, minor celebration, minor festival within rabbinic Jewish thinking. And the question, of course, arises, as it does with a lot of other festivals, although, of course, you keep your Hanukkahs and Purims and so on, and the minor fast days and so on, memorizing or memorializing certain days in our Jewish history and so on. The question in many people arises, well, Lag BaOmer, do we keep this in Messianic Judaism? And of course, I can't possibly sit here today speaking on behalf of all of the synagogues and congregations that make up Messianic Judaism around the world, and I certainly wouldn't dare to do so. But it's an interesting one, this Lag BaOmer, in many, many ways. It's got its various traditions and histories attached to it, but they do seem rather vague if you've done any kind of research on this one in terms of the actual backgrounds of it. Some people, of course, say that this is the day that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, a disciple, a follower of Rabbi Akiva, going into the 2nd century, died. His grave is on Mount Meron, and you'll know, of course, the ultra-Orthodox still like to go there and light up their bonfires and so on to celebrate the passing of this great man who continued the teachings of Rabbi Akiva. That's one version of why we have Lag BaOmer. Of course, another version is that the plague which had attacked Rabbi Akiva's own followers and disciples was devastating, wiping out so many of them. Thousands had died in this plague. And it was on this day that the plague was finally stopped, that, how do we put it in modern terms, the sombrero was flattened, or however we describe the graph as we do in our modern viral times. But this is the day when apparently it stopped, and of course it's memorialized for that as well. But it's not a festival commanded in the Torah. It's not one that we have to keep. If we don't keep it, it isn't a sin. It is a traditional day, and there are things attached to it, lighting of bonfires, as I've already said. A lot of people get married today as well, and certainly boys would have maybe their first haircut at the age of 3 for all kinds of reasons I won't go into now. But again, none of which is attached to the Torah or any particular command. It really is in the realm of tradition and culture and custom. And as we know, different brands of Judaism have very different brands of customs and practices and thoughts and beliefs. So what do we do with this day? Well, it's an interesting one. I think it's worth at least noting, as we do in Adat Yeshua, that it is there on the calendar. It doesn't necessarily mean that we keep it. We don't go and light bonfires. In our community, we don't do that, but we do understand the background to it. But the interesting point for us, I think, more than anything else, is the attachment to Rabbi Akiva in all of this. Rabbi Akiva, good or bad, or how do we understand this man? He's an interesting one. He stands really as a colossus in Jewish history, really because in many, many ways Rabbi Akiva is seen as the founding father of what became Rabbinic Judaism. I know people will scream possibly at that point, but this is certainly a fairly well accepted position for Akiva in our history. He is certainly the one who began the canonization approach, the drawing together texts. He was the one who was censoring, accepting, not accepting certain books and texts and so on, a process which continued, of course, as we know, for many hundred years after him. But nevertheless, he's an interesting one, notable, I think, through history, because this was the man who not only was developing through Yavne and beyond Rabbinic Judaism, but the man who proclaimed Bar Kokhba to be Mashiach. Now, Bar Kokhba was not the Mashiach. The question for me is, why did he choose this man to be Mashiach? And of course, there are all kinds of possible answers that we could go for through history in this. The point is, it was obvious that Bar Kokhba was not the Mashiach. Rabbi Akiva knew his Torah. He knew it very, very well. And I struggled to understand how someone of Akiva's stature in Judaism could have really got this so badly wrong. And yet he's still remembered, of course, and honored in Rabbinic Judaism as being one of the founder fathers of Rabbinic Jewish movements. And yet he catastrophically got this wrong. He proclaimed Bar Kokhba to be Mashiach, and he most definitely was not. And it was happening at a time, of course, when there was another person who was being proclaimed to be Mashiach at around about the same kind of time. And that, of course, is Yeshua, who was and is Mashiach of Israel. Is it possible, I wonder, when we speculate and we think about what's happening of how Rabbinic Judaism was bouncing off Messianic Judaism in the late 1st, early 2nd century and beyond, they were both forming each other and crashing into each other all the way through. As we know, there's some scholarly research being done on this of how they each formed each other and were feeding off each other in many ways. Just reading even today from Lawrence Schiffman in his book, some speculation, according to him, that possibly the immersion aspect for converts to Judaism was taken from, believe it or not, Messianic Judaism. It is possible, who knows? This is all speculation, but as a man like Lawrence Schiffman's stature to even write something in his book is certainly saying something. But we have a problem in Messianic Judaism because the Akiva was clearly wrong. We do not support him in his declaration of Bar Kokhba in this. Yeshua was Mashiach. Is it possible that he proclaimed Bar Kokhba to be Mashiach over against the Messianic Jewish claims of Yeshua because he felt the powerful need to have a rival Mashiach? It's possible. We know, of course, that Messianic Jews, anecdotally from history, didn't fight with Bar Kokhba because they refused to fight under the banner of this fake Messiah, because they would obviously only acknowledge Yeshua to be Mashiach, and we know that that caused, at least partially caused, part of the problem to the defeat of Israel to Rome, and many Messianic Jews, of course, being branded as traitors after that. And that's, as we know, is a very sad part of our history. It was certainly a major part of the divide that grew between nascent Rabbinic Judaism and Messianic Judaism into the 2nd century. We mourn and regret, obviously, the death of Rabbi Akiva's followers, whether the plague got them or whether this was just the thousands who died as a result of the war against Rome. It's difficult to tell at this distance, whatever the background of that was, but it's a very sad day for those who were fighting Rabbi Akiva. But his decision not to see Yeshua as Mashiach and to proclaim Bar Kokhba, the fake Messiah, caused real, lasting harm to Israel. For me, as a Messianic Jew, and for Messianic Jews, I think, around the world, we have a position and have to take a position of integrity as regards our history. We can't just massage history to suit our needs or suit our purposes. We have to take a far higher benchmark and bar standard of evidential truth in all of this. Integrity has to be the watchword of what Messianic Judaism is. Do we keep Lag BaOmer? We don't in our congregation. I'm not about to condemn those who do around the world in Rabbinic Judaism or elsewhere, that it's their decision to do that. But what I am asking for is that we have this higher benchmark. Lag BaOmer, take it, leave it, not commanded by Torah. Origins lost in the mist of time in all likelihood. But we are meant as Messianic Jews to examine this period of history, if we can, to find out the truth and reality of what was going on. It is vital that we do. If we don't, we will not understand what Messianic Judaism is, should be, can be today, the revival movement of Israel, and for any who would call upon the name of the Lord. Thank you for listening today, and I will see you again tomorrow. Toda Rabba, Litrot.